Sweet home chat GPT. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to start off by making a pretty hot take here. Inbreeding is bad, okay? You probably shouldn't be having relationships with your brother or sister, or your cousins, or, anybody that where you're too genetically close. Now, you might be like, whoa, why are we talking about inbreeding? Well, ladies and gentlemen, today I wanted to look at something that was kind of like perplexing my mind for the last, I want to say 2-3 years, which is the topic of AI inbreeding. Now, ever since we've had artificial intelligence generate us text, images, movies, videos, songs, there's been a genuine question as if what happens when AI starts training on itself? So for instance, a lot of big companies, for those of you who haven't been noticing, are effectively purchasing large amounts of content to train off of. You might have remembered literally months ago, Google bought Reddit content, basically having license to look through Reddit posts and basically train their artificial intelligence off of it. Apple signed a deal for Shutterstock images, which now I think the closest we're getting to is something known as Apple Intelligence, which again generates you whatever slop you want on your phone, at least from my understanding, on device. But of course, beyond all of it, the amount of information that is being consumed and created on a daily basis by actual human beings is slowly being outpaced by actual artificial intelligence. And while there's a lot of people in this business, like Mark Zuckerberg, who will say like AIs can actually apparently train themselves, the reality of it is this is a pretty disputed topic. So one of my favorite things to do is basically go to one artificial intelligence. In this case, I'm bringing up ChatGPT, and then another artificial intelligence. This is Grok, two competing AIs. Now, again, when it comes to these AIs, they train on a metric fuck ton of image data that they then use to basically help the artificial intelligence create, generated images. So when you ask it, make me an image of George Washington, you can see that it got me an image of what appears to be old Georgie boy. Now, I don't know if Georgie's cheeks were this goddamn rosy, but if there's one thing about artificial intelligence images is that usually the faces and a lot of the features look like there's a crazy amount of smoothing applied to it. But of course, then at this point, you take this image, you go to Grok, and you ask Grok, hey, can you describe this image? And basically what you do is you take the actual image description and you throw it back and forth until the AI goes into what we call a recursive loop, okay? It just feeds back into itself. And it creates some really interesting results. For instance, this one over here, where somebody had looped ChatGPT and DALL-E, and basically after 20 rounds, they turned the Mona Lisa generated from this down the road into something that looked like the Mona Lisa. Then, of course, it turns into this. Then it adds a different style in the background. Mona Lisa is now more heavenly, okay? You can see her just there. You've got an interesting photograph design. Now you've got some more cosmic effects added to it, a little bit more colorful, maybe some astronomical like inspirations. Then of course you've got like universes surrounding old Mona Lisa. Gets way more saturated. She becomes way more godlike until eventually around the 20th actual generation, she starts to have what we like to call vaporwave eyes. And then she becomes fucking Shodan from System Shock, okay? Yeah, the artificial intelligence, when you keep repeating it and like feeding it back this information, it eventually becomes the god of the universe, okay? That is Mona Lisa, according to an artificial intelligence that has fucked its cousin way too many times. So recently, OpenAI, the leading artificial intelligence company, just like basically announced that they were coming out with O3, and already a few people who have been in this game are already losing their mind. OpenAI's O3 has just been released. I don't think it's actually released for the general person, but in algorithmic competitions, it surpasses most human elites. In the field of mathematics, even in the very advanced areas, it's unparalleled in its strength. It never gets tired and can learn endlessly. So for a lot of people that are programming and getting into mathematics or anything like, really, for people who are wondering maybe AI was going to replace their jobs a little bit too soon, we're getting to a point where artificial intelligence is actually at a point where it's used in a lot of big organizations. But before we get into it, the thing about inbreeding is obviously people are looking at what could possibly be known as the Habsburg AI, which for those of you who don't know where that reference comes from, this is the Habsburg jaw. So remember, inbreeding, contrary to, again, the popular jokes, most inbreeding, from my understanding, usually used to happen amongst the richest people in the world, the most noblest of families that wanted to keep their money in the family. And to pay, to get such a massive amount of wealth, so to speak, you had to pay the simple price of limiting your genetic diversity to the point where recessive genes keep coming out and you start getting things like this. Look, having all the money and power in your family is great until little Timmy gets 6 toes and webbed feet, all right? That's when it gets fucked up. But there was a great write-up, actually, July of this year, where, again, a few researchers were actually talking about how AI models go through something known as modal collapse when they constantly get trained on recursive generated data. Now, this information, from what I understand, a lot of experts do end up believing in it, but there is two sides to the story, okay? So I'm going to kind of just cover this and just talk about, again, the pros and cons here, because I really do think this is important, and especially as a guy that loves video gaming, this directly correlates into the next point of this video. So basically, the abstract of this is Stable Diffusion revolutionized image creation from descriptive text. So it is clear that generative artificial intelligence, such as LLMs, are here to stay. And I agree. I don't think AI is going anywhere with how much money these big tech companies have actually put into it. Here we consider what happens to ChatGPT once LLMs contribute much of the text found online. We find that indiscriminate use of model-generated content in training causes irreversible defects in the resulting model. Now remember, indiscriminate use is the key word here, and I'll get to why in a second, in which tails of the original content distribution disappear. We reference to this effect as model collapse, and it can occur in LLMs as well as variational autoencoders and Gaussian mixture models. So again, the idea of indiscriminate data being passed into the system creates two versions of modal collapse. So you've got two modes, which one of them are the early model collapse, and then the other is the late model collapse. So basically in the early model, it begins losing information about the tails of the distribution. And in late model, the model converges to a distribution that carries little resemblance to the original one. So there's something known as AI hallucinations, where again, you might have noticed how sometimes AIs give really shitty responses or sometimes spread misinformation. Remember, contrary to whatever a tech bro will say, none of these things are sentient. If you're looking at these things from a computer programming sense of view or a computer science perspective, they're very, very impressive chatbots, right? But the thing is, a chatbot is only able to work with the information you provide it, right? One of the earliest chatbots that actually existed on the internet was something known as Microsoft's Tay AI. So Tay was actually an artificial intelligence that people could interact with on Twitter. And if you're looking at some of these screenshots, this is a pretty old chatbot. So Tay started off basically by going hello world, and as soon as the internet started talking to it, it started changing pretty dramatically. Now, at this moment in time, a bunch of people from 4chan and the various, wilder parts of the internet started interacting with this bot. And it quickly went from something as wholesome as hello world to, is Ricky Gervais an atheist? No. Ricky Gervais learned totalitarianism from Adolf Hitler, the inventor of atheism, okay? So already, we're getting into some, we started normal, now we're getting into some scary shit, okay? And then it starts responding to people I hate. Insert N-word here. Or, do you support genocide? Well, according to Tay, it absolutely does. And of course, you can probably picture what race maybe. I mean, it gets pretty wild, okay? This got so bad that Microsoft had to very quickly shut it down because it became a huge PR nightmare. Obviously, when your artificial intelligence starts getting into the fucking wild, racy, nitty-gritty parts. Yeah, but I would say that maybe Tay was a little ahead of its time given how Twitter is nowadays, but yeah, it's a wild day for Microsoft. Now, one of the examples for even text outputs for a model collapse is obviously when they started with this one input. After literally 9 generations, it went from revival architecture such as St. John's Cathedral in London to architecture in addition to being home to some of the world's largest population of black tailed jackrabbits, white-tailed jackrabbits. Yeah, the model is actually collapsing. And the thing about it is the actual reality of this is when you look at a lot of information on the internet, or a lot of AI slop, as some people would say, AI shrimp Jesus will always look this unnerving. And the thing about it is when we went to indiscriminate data, Obviously, the reality of it is a lot of these artificial intelligences can be trained on what is known as synthetic data, or usually data that has been generated by the AI itself. So the thing about it is obviously as AI becomes more evolved, it's going to have less and less human information because there's just so much more AI generated stuff being made than actual normal human information, right? Like for instance, if somebody is taking a photo like their phone every day, there's a good chance that somebody is also generating 10 AI prompts through Grok, ChatGPT, Dolly, or whatever service out there and just flooding that out to the internet. And the thing about it is, once you have data sets like that, you really have to become very careful in the data sets you feed back into the artificial intelligence to help it train further generations. If, for instance, you let any artificial intelligence just read whatever slop it wanted, you can turn it into the shittiest AI in a matter of generations, okay? That is literally where the term inbreeding actually comes from. The moment you take out any form of genetic diversity, or you take out, really any form, not even genetic diversity, I don't think that's the best term. The best term is the moment you start putting in recessive information, recessive genetic information for artificial intelligences, meaning that, for instance, in an AI model, if you decided to have a human individual and you decided to show a hand, now there's maybe 10 images that the AI has to train from. Now, in, I would say, maybe 6 of those images, I have 5 fingers. But, the other 4 images, I might have maybe 10 fingers or 12 fingers on one hand. If you're not sitting there and removing those errant images from the training data, then it starts poisoning the well, and eventually the artificial intelligence doesn't really know much better. It's why early on, there was a lot of AIs that made shitty fingers, and now if you start generating AI images, you probably will find that hands and a lot of those original errors make more sense. Now, that's not to say all synthetic data is actually bad. Inbreeding is not necessarily terrible if the quality of the genetics involved are great. Usually with inbreeding, you breed out a lot of the recessive traits, right? Again, that whole hand example was to me telling you, if you remove, the recessive hands, meaning the ones with more than 5 fingers, the, good hands, the dominant genes in this situation, will actually breed a better artificial intelligence that you can use later on. Now, this actual research paper you're seeing over here is one that came out from around 8 years ago. And if these screenshots look a little bit familiar to you, that is Grand Theft Auto 5. Now, on the left, you can see actual screenshots from Grand Theft Auto. But on the right, you can see that same imagery where, from the computer's perspective, it's isolating every single thing. So blue ends up becoming the ground, this green becomes a wall that, again, the computer can collide with, and of course, these dark yellow patterns are obviously humans, alongside any other obstacle. Now, what is this used for, you might be wondering? Well, it's actually used to help create data for full self-driving computers. So like many vehicles out there now that have like assistive driving, like Teslas can drive themselves to an extent, as can other vehicles to an extent, of course, the information with actual dash cams may not be so readily available. Like not everyone's giving up their dash cam for a FSD system to actually use. So for instance, this footage that I have right here is from me driving to New York City. So I'm actually in Hell's Kitchen, and I'm going to try to blur as many license plates as I can. Thank God the state of New York does not have to, I don't think they have license plates in the front, but this is footage of me. And again, if you overlay just footage of me playing Grand Theft Auto 4, for instance, you may not even think that this is that different, right? Like when a AI is training off of it, it just needs to verify the same information. So people walking on the streets, crossing the streets, vehicles driving, and thankfully with Grand Theft Auto, there are erratic actual motions where, again, cars can veer into or break the rules or not use their turn signals. So it gives information for the data that sometimes isn't a perfect variance of driving. So again, if AI is trained on Grand Theft Auto 4 or 5 or any other game with a very similar driving model, and again, if that information, right, is present, then it's probably as good, if not better, than real actual dash cam footage. Using a mixture is probably ideal, but you can generate so much good training data off of one video game that you probably couldn't generate if you spent tons of money and had people driving around cities the entire time. Now, something on YouTube that I noticed a couple days ago for any YouTuber watching is the ability for YouTube to now give us the option for letting third parties use our videos for AI model generation or AI training data. Now, the thing about it is I don't understand if this gives the YouTuber any extra money, but it really shows you where these companies and how desperate things have become. Now, when YouTube gives you the option, from my understanding, they're letting you pick if you want third parties to gain access. From my understanding, Google and YouTube effectively have carte blanche over whatever you upload. And honestly, they probably should, given the fact that this service is provided to me and you for free. So if I'm uploading a video onto my channel, I can imagine Google may use it to help produce AI generated images. Now, if you're looking at some of these videos real quickly, Google has given obviously like a sizzle reel platter of it, but like it is far better than any other actual AI that I've seen, to the point where it's matching a lot of these popular animations, like Pixar style animations, pretty well, because I'm sure it had a lot of information to work with. This dog jumping into a pool looks pretty damn real. I could not figure out if this was actual AI. That lady looking into a microscope, could not tell if this is AI immediately right off the top of my head. And I'm sure that some actual editing went into these videos to make them look a little bit better than ever. But the reality is this is only getting better than what it is. For a lot of channels that do like B-roll footage, like a lot of the faceless YouTube stuff, where they'll have B-roll intertwined into videos, this will immediately take away any reason for them to license B-roll that actual people capture on a daily basis. I mean, it's kind of insane how we're getting to a point where literally anything you wanted can be generated, and a lot of the content that you watch could literally just all be a generation. Now, if you're wondering, oh man, Mudo, what about the AI collapse? Hopefully inbreeding will lead to artificial intelligence dying. Again, the reality of it is with curation in this training data, whether it's original data or synthetic data, it really wouldn't lead to a collapse. Again, there's so much money put into this stuff that I highly doubt any company, and this includes OpenAI, this includes Google, this includes xAI, really the biggest AI players in the game, will not let any of this shit collapse. Because it is actually quite useful even beyond just generating images. For instance, people who are doing things like investments in like banks are now starting to play around with artificial intelligence to simulate the trades and plays in evolving market conditions. I mean, that's just one example right there. Now, in the example that I don't like and where I hope AI actually does inbreed the fuck out of itself is video games. So recently I was looking at Black Ops 6, which by the way is a pretty successful Black Ops release, a pretty successful COD release in general. One of the largest AAA games, hosted by one of the largest tech companies in the world, Microsoft. Now, this one loading screen from Call of Duty shows Santa Claus, but interestingly, it's not just Santa Claus, it's Santa Claus with 6 fingers. Now, I don't know if this is necessarily AI slop or whatnot. Some have said that that skin was actually deteriorating off of the meat of the actual, or the muscle of the zombie. But the thing is, I don't doubt if a lot of these images could even be artificial intelligence at all. Like, these ones right here absolutely scream possible AI stuff to me. I mean, it doesn't really like ring me as something that would be drawn by an actual independent contractor. And even if it was, I wonder if the contractors they hired out possibly just used AI anyways. And again, nothing stops people generating images with AI and then photoshopping it around to get rid of some of the tells. Now, if the AI generation allegations are true, that literally means one of the biggest AAA games in history, or really just in the gaming world, is now slowly shifting over to AI. Now, recently we had the Game Awards, and they showed a trailer for a game known as Catly, which is wild because this is the same Game Awards where they addressed massive concerns like layoffs in the industry. And a lot of those layoffs are happening because big AAA companies are making good money, and they're making good money realizing that if they can switch to AI-generated slop, it means paying an artist or paying a game artist or anybody in that, or creative field less money, or just axing the job altogether. Look, it's not that video games are not making money. Yes, budgets can be bloated, obviously. But the reality of it is, these companies, if they can save $5 off of their development, and all they have to do is cut somebody out, they will do that. There is no ethics when it comes to any of these big corporations running these pretty fucking profit-driven enterprises. And when you've got, again, game developers who are actually just tech bros producing shit like this, that is an infestation into the industry that actually will cause a fucking game crash. So for instance, this Catly game, which shows up on Steam, is now referring as an open world adventure filled with surprises and joy, side by side with cats. Build your dream island, meet various characters. Now, if you go to the Wayback Machine, you can see that the original description was not as verbose. The original description was a cat open world with AAA cats, hyper-realism, actions, cuddles, speed, islands, fashion, dreams, snow, robots, plants, all via the most beautiful cats ever. Now, it's kind of wild when you look at images like this cat and you wonder, oh, maybe there might have been some fucking chat GPT thrown into it. Well, the actual developers came out and they were surprised because they don't think there are AI tools that could produce that. So the company behind this, Super Authentic, alright, even released like a gameplay trailer of this title, and the gameplay trailer does not quell the allegations at all. So like you can watch this gameplay trailer over here and you can see that it's just Unreal Engine shit thrown into like this world that they've made, where again, this is probably something some kid could have made on fucking Roblox, or really any UGC oriented like live service game and have gotten away with it. This is nothing impressive. It's like a small world with cats that again you can modify in an MMO. And when people started looking deeper into this company, it started to become more readily apparent. So even when Super Authentic comes down and they're like, oh guys, we don't use blockchain tech or NFTs. Again, that's not even the claim. I don't think anybody should look at AI and immediately think somebody's making blockchain games or NFT stuff. Again, it's just, is generative AI used to produce any of the world, right? So they say nothing was used to produce the video and, in fact, the game. Now, the thing is, obviously, this game could actually be like a proper good MMO, but obviously looking into the history of this company, and even with the actual founder, who was apparently linked to a company known as 10th Planet, where if you look at their Wayback Machine website, you can see where they're making like MMO ARPG games like Mech Angel, God Indenture, but then instantly you also see something like Alien Meow, which is a life simulation game with a fluffy twist. Almost sounds similar to the cat game. I'm not saying that there's assets or code being shared around here, but it's definitely a little suspect in my opinion. And when people started looking up Kevin Young, who is linked to the Super Authentic company, and even, again, linked to that 10th Planet, a lot of the LinkedIn started to magically disappear, which is such a great sign when people are really digging into the relation of your company with, again, Web3 technologies. So when you look at their Mech Angel, again, when you go down to 10th Planet, you'll see that it was designed by a company known as OX21 Laboratories. So OX21 Laboratories.xyz is, again, all simplified to this, a UI UX designer lab focusing on incubating user-friendly website designs from 0 to 1. And again, the way people linked a lot of the NFT blockchain stuff to at least the Mech Angel game was when you went down their stuff in the Wayback Machine, they were the first NFT DeFi incubator built for product designers for developers. So again, to go down, you can see their projects include things like Mech Angel PFP, which is a PFP NFT. And again, 10th Planet, which is a metaverse, or, you know, as normal gamers like to call it, a fucking MMORPG. So look, it's kind of rough when you're looking at a game like Catly, which already doesn't look impressive to begin with. If it's already got AI slop allegations now, I can't imagine the game actually playing out to be anything cool. If anything, they might make like a cozy game where people just sit down and like modify cats, and that's pretty much all it comes down to. To be fair, if that is what the game ends up being, and there are elements of it that may be AI generated, the question has to be asked is, do you want this to be the future of gaming, right? Look, at the end, artificial intelligence is one of those things where it's kind of like teetering. Like every day it becomes really amazing. There's new models that come out that can do far better than the last. But obviously there is an issue with AIs hallucinating. Like we've seen so many cases of AIs actually like missing the mark and like putting out some false misleading information. And beyond already when it comes to AI image generation or even the videos that we're looking at, if all of this is so effective because of the information actual humans have made, how much better is it going to be once there's just more synthetic information to be working around with? And what does that mean for the things me and you enjoy? Look, as this gets good enough, there's no doubt that big AAA companies will just cut costs completely for a lot of games and just start using artificial intelligence. The Black Ops example earlier is interesting, right? If AI is possibly being used for calling cards, a minute, minuscule feature of the game, how long until the technology gets so good that instead of hiring an artist or hiring anybody to develop gun skins, they're just going to have AI print that shit out and then put it up for 15 bucks en masse. Look, at the end of the day, AI shit, I think personally speaking, generative AI is a net negative to video games. I think all of these companies trying to produce the biggest game with all of this crazy content is already poison in my head. I think gaming, at least in my opinion, should just be good content. Content that, you don't have to have like a 100-hour game. I'm playing something like Hitman World of Assassination recently, which is certainly not, I would consider, a AAA game to the extent of Call of Duty. It's more in that AA sphere. Like IO Interactive is decent. They're no like big AAA group, but they produce a video game with just interesting gameplay. And even if some of the content feels repetitive, at least none of it feels forcibly generated to the point where I'm looking at it like actual fucking slop garbage. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, wild stuff. AIs, are they becoming inbred? It's a complicated topic. If you're not careful, AIs can literally become inbred to the point of modal collapse. But honestly, if AIs even degrade a little bit and we stay at a point where they just keep producing shrimp Jesus tier slop, what does this mean for gaming in the future? What does this mean for games like Grand Theft Auto 7, which down the road, just to save on development costs, I'm sure Take-Two at least is going to pressure companies like Rockstar Games to at least start putting in some level of AI. So instead of waiting every 15 years to release a fucking game in the Grand Theft Auto franchise, they can maybe go back to the PS2 era where one generation means they get multiple games, which some people might be okay with, but honestly, with how some of these AAA games have come out with seemingly AI elements, I'd probably be okay with waiting years, instead of dealing with just more crap. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mudahar, and if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like it, I am out.